I'm not going to tell them I'm inviting them
No,
into the meeting.
no, but I'm just asking
we're
if
saying
you're okay
we're
with
fine.
it.
And
Yeah.
are these meetings with the entire Woods Hole Community Association or just 2 members? Or a
Three.
smaller group?
Who are the members?
Okay.
David,
Catherine, Eric.
David Martin, Catherine,
And Catherine, yeah,
and Eric.
Eric, okay.
and Eric, yeah,
Just
Okay.
trying to.
And I'm
trying to
sure
work
they'd
this
So
be
it's
out.
not their
Yeah.
usual monthly.
yeah.
No.
I think the reason, when this needs to be highlighted as smart, we have a larger regional
Right.
question that our mission is driven by.
And we're getting to that.
Yeah, we're
I
getting.
know, but I think that's.
So let Lori.
All right.
And some of
Hold
the
on,
next
hold on.
questions. Hey, are we okay moving on as far
Can
as the meeting?
I
goes?
ask one thing about?
What is the time,
number
so the
one?
time frame is undetermined, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Short. I just have one question about number one. It's not a question, it's a statement. If you were able to move stuff to a second building and the actual building was smaller, do you think we'd have a chance of getting a variance so that the building didn't have to be raised so high? Because it wouldn't have as many functions in it.
No.
It's just,
I don't think.
no.
I mean, I'm just saying, my sense is that it's going to be an occupied building one way. It could be occupied by a lot of people in bad weather. It's people who, you're going to have to meet the code requirements, even if it were occupied by only a few people. You're still going to have the public, especially the important people, and more important than even our own employees, possibly, are the members of the public in that building. So even if it were smaller in size, it's still going to have to meet all the code requirements.
Anything bigger than a shed.
Right.
Okay. All right, go to 4.
Okay, moving along. I'd like to skip
Six
ahead to
foot
question
fence, right?
5.
Isn't that the other one?
It would have to be bigger than a shed.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Bob, is it all right with you if we skip ahead to question 5?
You want me to pick it up? Or
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Talking about port liability, what got us thinking about this is that Boston Globe, who was so kind to everybody in Falmouth, and Steamship Authority as well, they ran a front-page article last week about the $12 million that Falmouth has to pay off on wind turbines, okay? And
My condolences.
yeah, and I calculated that means it's $3,000 per household in Falmouth. that
Not
they-
over yet.
Huh? It's not over yet.
We're in for 5.
All right. But the question came up, and then reading the different papers, and I read, I think in the Gazette, Vineyard Gazette, that Bob and maybe somebody else at Steamship said that they're not going to go along with some of the recommendations of HMS, specifically the chief operating officer. That's not on the table. And
that's inaccurate. That's inaccurate.
that's inaccurate, okay. I'm glad to hear that, because my contacts in the insurance business have told me that you really have to do it. You have to do what HMS says, or you have to keep them happy, because they are the same consultants that your insurance companies would use in taking a close look at you. So the question comes up, if your insurance were at risk, and I'm asking this because all of the communities that you operate in are at risk if you guys run a deficit. If your insurance were at risk, would you let the communities know that? Would you?
Yes. First of all, I think it's fair to say, and Bob, I have no reason to believe that our insurance is at risk. Correct? Okay, I just didn't.
Okay.
All right. We have had a very good and long relationship with all of our insurance carriers.
Mhm.
Our loss ratio is very good, everything along that line. You know, even if there were some increase in premium, which I don't see, because it's not borne out by what they look at to determine the premiums, we would be easily able to cover that. That's number one. I don't think worrying about insurance is a concern to the community at all. The other thing is the operating in the red, or with the HMS report, as you know, will in the short term if we were to follow all of our recommendations, as I say in the short term, it will be a lot more expensive than our current operating expenses are. In the long term, it's supposed to, pay for itself over time, not only in terms of money, but in terms of safety, reliability, and all of the things that we want. The two island board members whose residents essentially pay for everything, because it's the island residents who pay for the steamship authority for the most part.
Don't forget the tourists.
The tourists too, but Falmouth residents, New Bedford residents, and Barnstable residents don't really pay unless they go back and forth, a very small portion of the thing.
We pay in other ways.
They pay another, that's very good, okay. They have said, quite frankly, that, if it's a rate increase, it's a rate increase. So, unlike other years in which they've been concerned about the cost of living on the island and what our rates mean to the cost of living there, I think it's fair to say they've looked at the report and they say, if it's going to be rate increases, that's what it's going to be. So I think you have a good, positive attitude on the part of the island board members this time. Not that it wasn't positive before, but they're looking at this and saying it's a good investment for the steamship authority.
Because in the long run, it's projected to save you.
Well, not money, not just money, but everything else.
Oh, yeah, it creates efficiencies.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I think.
No, the last part, I'm sorry, about the COO on the table, or not, the Chief Operating Officer. We did our initial take on the report, and what was part of the report is that while HMS talked about certain things with us in advance, mainly in terms of the facts, to make certain that they got the facts right, they made factual findings, and we had discussions about the factual findings in the report. We didn't have any discussions with them about their recommendations, except possibly in passing. Nothing about what recommendations are going to be. And so not only did they make recommendations regarding development of an SMS, QMS, LMS, but then they went ahead with the additional hiring positions and the organization chart. They recognize, and we've had discussions, that there may be other good ideas that we have, knowing, because we know of the organization, than the specific organization chart, the specific positions they've recommended. And they are proposing that we have a discussion about that. And their attitude about that is that there may be alternatives, and their only concern is that they want to make certain that whatever alternatives are considered accomplish the objectives that they want to accomplish in the report. And so our initial take was that if we have a director of marine operations, and that's an elevated position here, over the port captain. So we do represent, our vessel operations at the, senior staff level, same par with everything else, with a very high degree of capability in that position. Port captain also with experience, and then an assistant port captain. Do we really need a COO another level between them and the general manager? And is that where we want to put the money in, since we're talking $1 million, $2 million a year? And so we have to look, we owe it to everyone to look and say, what does the COO bring to the organization that a director of marine operations doesn't bring? And that's
Okay, well, I have
so
read
that's-
in
Right.
the papers that was off the table.
It's not off the
And
table.
it's not off the table.
No.
You have to keep them happy is the point.
Right.
The initial
So-
focus was to concentrate on port captain and the director of marine operations. As we go along, we develop these other, bring in these other programs and some of these other positions. At that point, whether there's, reevaluate whether there is a need for a COO.
And HMS, are they going to deliver on the communications part of their,
Yes.
they are?
Yes.
And will they then look at the Iano crash? They couldn't.
IANO.
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 Okay. But they were prevented from looking at that, I suspect, because it's still under review.
I think that's inaccurate too. I think they decided not to look at that, and that may have been one of the reasons they decided. But I think probably what they're looking at from our operations is a global perspective, And I don't think they had to look at any particular incident in order to say, these are the global recommendations for developing an SMS, you know, moving to a process-based approach to management.
Yep.
And so they chose the incidents they did their root cause analysis on.
I think they would have prejudiced any litigation that might be
I-
ongoing.
And I can't say one way or the other.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so,
Just a couple,
Thank you.
yeah. thank
quick
you.
question. Is the, any financial responsibility of the steamship authority, is that already set in terms of the Hyannis accident? And I know the Coast Guard report hasn't come out, but you're not expecting any more responsibility for that accident under any circumstances, no matter what the Coast Guard report says?
We are covered by insurance in that accident. So yes, in terms of ultimate responsibility for the steamship authority, we're covered.
Then second, is there a
They
ceiling?
picked up Premiums down the road, but.
Is there a ceiling to the coverage? One thinks of the Staten Island ferry, you know, which deaths ran into millions of dollars. Is there,
I think if, going back to the question that's here in terms of the financial losses, you know, we do have a reserve fund, so if we do run into deficit, we would first access to reserve fund, and then beyond that, the enabling act requires the distribution of any other deficit to be, you know, for the 5 communities, so.
so there is a ceiling to the insurance I'm hearing, is that accurate? Or, I mean, if something catastrophic happened with many lost lives,
We have all the bumper sheets.
I mean, we can find examples that,
We don't have all the examples. We have the bumper shoes. We have those types of policies as well. I mean, we'll get that information, but we're reasonably confident we're covered.
is that an open document, the insurance policy?
Yes.
Maybe we should, can we look at it? Okay, we'll
Yes,
request it.
we're offering
Okay.
that.
Okay, sorry, okay, misunderstood.
No, it just, I mean, we're offering that. I mean, we
Yeah,
just,
we have to redact some stuff, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's the attorney. He may-
Now, I would think towns would be interested as well. I mean,
Sure.
catastrophic
Yeah,
things
yeah.
need to be planned for.
I know, no, what's strange is we have been covered by insurance all the time. If you think of the MBTA, apparently it's self-insured, which is.
Self-insured
To a degree. I mean, that was the biggest complaint about the
That's a large-
MBTA, but.
Well, that's like your reserve fund, you're saying, or something.
There's a large retention there. between
One-
excess
one
insurance
Thing that has happened over the past 60 or 70 years is that the steamship authority's budget is as big as the town of Falmouth's, within a couple of million.
Pretty
close.
dollars.
So
So
the school?
We're about 112 or 114 million.
So it's
About 110, so.
relatively, it's, you know, it could have a big impact.
But it probably, I'm guessing, it probably always has been comparable to the town's budget. They've probably both grown at about the
Budget
same.
has been, ours is growing pretty fast.
Okay. Then ours probably was higher than yours in the past, because ours has been growing not as fast as yours. I mean, I don't know.
We've taken on quite a bit of debt in the last 10, 15 years.
Falmouth can't afford another hit. Okay, right now, it's,
No.
Well, I mean,
Could I ask a question about the COO and the HMS
Yeah.
report? Do you feel as if the reason that they recommended that COO position be created and be filled with like a person with like real marine experience, do you think there's something to go with that? And can I ask a question? I don't know your background that much. Is your experience more of management, you know, like personnel management rather than marine background? Were you?
I've come up through the accounting department. I started as an auditor, assistant treasurer, and treasurer for 13, 14 years as treasurer, so
Okay.
that was my background. And in terms of, you know, when it came time for the board to look at Wayne's replacement, they did look at, you know, what they had done in the past, what the board had done in the past. They had brought in, they'd done national searches in the past, and I guess the consensus at the time they felt was that, you know, perhaps we should be looking inside, so.
Right. And I understand your knowledge of the business and all, makes sense. But I'm wondering if part of their reasoning may have been that COO position be created was so that you could bring in somebody who's been, you know, a marine port captain or something like that.
And so that's why, you know, in terms of, you know, our organization, we had a port captain and an assistant port captain. The poor captain retired back in the spring. And at the time, we went to fill the position, and HMS asked us to hold off on that because they said they had some specific ideas about it. And then in the report, they ding us in the report by saying we hadn't filled the position. So they got us on that one, so.
But I mean, but maybe they're
But
thinking.
the idea is that I acknowledge that we need to have strong individuals to handle marine issues, marine questions and things like that. We have, not to say we don't have them, we do have, you know, a director of engineering, port engineers, assistant port engineers, Pete Sarides, he was a chief engineer, so we do have a number of
I understand
individuals in the
that, but
organization.
if you had a guy who had been previously port captain or director of marine operations, who now was ready to be at this upper management level to be that COO, would we be more effective in dealing with the dry docks and the transitions and those type of things?
That's what's going to be our discussion with HMS going forward. What were they thinking? The only amount that we know what they were thinking was what they put in the report. And so,
So at
Is
some
what?
point when they
On the other
conclude
one. The only thing that they were thinking is what I,
the only thing we know about what they were thinking when they made that recommendation was what's contained in the report.
oh,
so
Okay?
are
That's
they
all we
gonna
know.
get the communications part done and then come to you to have a meeting and talk about what it all means? Is that the plan?
We are, hopefully, they are proposing that they move forward with us. Of course, it's an additional service, but to have some initial thoughts, initial planning about how to implement the recommendations. They do not want us to be, they know that, you know, we're under pressure, as we should be, to move forward with this report, and we're making steps. But they think it's important to do it right and to make sure, and so what they're proposing, and it may take longer under their proposal, is to have some initial planning efforts just on how to implement the recommendations in the proper order, how to prioritize the recommendations. That's going to be up for the board to decide at their next meeting, and we're proposing that the board have a meeting on Saturday, February 9th in Hyannis, so that everyone can make it.
Hopefully we'll have a brand new threat,
Okay.
because we're waiting till the end of January apparently to see
That was yesterday.
We're there.
our applicant pool will be, and then we'll decide
Okay.
as soon as possible in February.
You know, Oceanographic has struggled with that over the past 50 or so years, and they, from time to time, they'll bring in an 08 or an 09 from either the Navy usually, because they interact with the Navy so much, but for steamship, it might be a Coast Guard 08 or 09, and
Interesting thought, for a short term,
yeah,
finite.
But what you, I mean, in the report, they've recommended a new director of marine operations, so that's a higher elevation than we've ever had, with experience both in process-based management and captain's, captain's license, and a new port captain with the same qualifications.
Right.
So, our initial thought is that's a heavy influx of good marine experience there, in addition to the engineering staff and our assistant port captain. And so, it's
And a wealth of qualified individuals that are
Right.
actually out on the vessels.
Right. So that's all we're thinking, and we're looking not just at improving things, but at good value. And that goes on to the planner position, if you've read, okay. They say we need to develop a strategic plan. We agree with that. I'm sure you agree with that. Nat has mentioned that a few times.
We have one for you already.
Unless you charge it Hopefully not as much.
Forward-thinking plan for the region.
It's free.
So the issue there is they said, okay, your board and your staff needs help in developing this. You start with the mission statement, then you get to objectives, and then you get to strategic plan. And they've only, they say you need all these additional positions in these marine field, which is where they're very focused on. But they don't really say how to do the strategic planning. And I'm going to use this to get people's opinions here, because we've heard different schools of thought on this. They're saying just to get outside help in developing these three items, not implementing, just developing them, is $125,000. And we're thinking, well,